All right, welcome back to episode 3 of Ring Chronicles. Back here with Glenn Ritchie. I'm Lance Vaughn.
Howdy.
All right, so what do you got for us today?
Well, I decided to talk about women's wrestling and
okay.
the lineage of women's world titles. And
Right.
I'm not going to say all the whole time either.
Okay.
So, Lance, how was our numbers last week? Did we have 21?
No, we were down a good bit.
Oh, my God.
Yep, we were down a good bit. Now,
Our first episode was worse than our second episode, yet our second episode goes down in numbers.
Our second episode was better, but it went down. Yeah. So our first episode topped out at 20 for the whole week. Okay. Now after that week, and after I got the second episode up, we got 2 more downloads on the first episode, and we ended up with a total of 8 for the second episode.
8?
Yeah, 8.
That's me, you, and Abe. That's 3.
Tony and
Tony. Is Tony listening to it? Do we know if Tony's even listening to it?
I think he is.
He hasn't commented about anything yet.
Well, that's a good point. Well,
he might not be listening. Tony, if you're listening, please let us know.
Well, Pensacola, Florida popped up. In the location, so I'm assuming that's him.
All right, that's probably Tony. Yeah. Okay.
And there's one in Nashville.
Well, we know who that is.
So that's the fan of Vince Russo.
Fan of Vince Russo.
Yep.
All
right. So
was there one in Atlanta?
There was like 3 in Atlanta, I think.
One of them might be my girlfriend.
Yeah, definitely one. Now, we seem to be big in Alabama.
All right. So we're going to say nothing but good things about Alabama.
Right. So I think there's 3 or 4 different cities popped up in Alabama.
Really?
Yeah. Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, a town I'm not sure how to pronounce. It's like Wetumpka or something like that.
Lance, don't fuck up their name.
Sorry,
that might be one of our fans.
I'm sorry to the people in the town that start with a W. But yeah,
message us and let us know how to pronounce your town, and we will talk about it and bring prestige to the W town.
That's right. So yeah, we're I don't know, we're still figuring this thing out. I'm trying to push it out every which way I know how. I'm trying to get at least one clip pushed every day. So this following week, I'm gonna try to get one highlight from this show up every day of the week. And I'm still kind of messing around with it. There was a couple that I uploaded as just like regular YouTube videos. But they didn't do as well as the shorts do. The YouTube shorts seems to hit more people.
That's good to know.
Another thing I did was I did an ad on Instagram for one of the videos for the hookers video.
The hookers video.
Yeah. So
if you don't know what we're talking about with hookers, you need to go to listen to the first episode.
Right. So I did an ad for that. I did like a $25 budget. And for like 5 days, I think. And so far, it says it's gotten in front of like 3,500 people.
Really?
Yeah, but that doesn't seem to have translated over into downloads. So it's saying so my goal of it was for people to click on the website and go to the website for the podcast. And it's saying that like out of like the 3,500 people, like 80 of them have clicked on the link to go to the website. But I'm not seeing many more additional downloads. There was probably maybe 5 or less out of that actually listened.
The fuck?
Yeah.
So they went to the website and didn't download?
Yeah, right. Or stream it.
Okay.
Which, by the way, I found out that a stream does count as a download.
Okay.
Yeah, so actually on Spotify, it breaks it down even more. It's got starts, and then there's streams. Okay, so starts is where somebody played the podcast for more than 0 seconds. Okay?
Okay.
A stream counts for somebody that streamed the podcast for more than 60 seconds. I mean, whatever. But there was like 19 starts and 13 streams or something like that.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it's a work in progress. I'm trying to get it out to the masses. We did have one. I don't remember if this was before last week's episode, but we did have one person on Twitter that mentioned us. So
That was the guy that loves Vince Russo.
No. This was somebody else.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Because the guy that loves Vince Russo, wrestling savant.
Yeah.
That's the guy that loves Vince Russo. Read the rest of his stuff.
I did not realize that. I did read
I pieced it together. Like, yeah.
I did read like 2 of his posts or something, but I couldn't tell that it was.
If you go deeper into his post, you figure out who it is.
Oh, okay.
The mystery is solved.
Okay. Well, the fan of Vince Russo had like 80 followers.
So, before we get started on women's wrestling history, I wanted to address 2 things. I want everything to be as accurate as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe in the first episode, I talked about the circus and how the fans would pay to beat the champion, yada, yada, yada. And then there was a prize. I started thinking about that, and I think that I assumed that there was a prize.
Okay.
I don't know for sure if there was a prize or not. So that might be something I can look into later or whatever.
Okay.
Also, I completely butchered somebody's name.
Okay.
Edouard Carpentier is how it's pronounced. The internet search that I did that pronounced the name for me completely blew it up.
Okay.
I was listening to the Jim Cornette podcast, and his name actually came up.
Really?
In the Jim Cornette podcast, and so I learned how to actually pronounce his name. So I hope I did it right there. Okay, and actually, there's a third thing I need to correct.
Okay.
Well, it's a partial correction. I said that we were doing the men's title first because it went further back and there were fewer interruptions. Well, I found out when I actually researched this, while there were interruptions where there were vacancies and things like that for, lengthy periods of time, so like, more than what you would want for a title, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. And also, it's only goes back less than of 1 year.
Okay.
So 1905, George Hackenschmidt.
George Hackenschmidt.
Well, guess what?
What?
Cora Livingston.
1906.
1906.
Fuck yeah.
So, also, I'm going to go ahead and give, a content warning about this one.
Okay, yeah, sure.
There's some fucked up shit. There is some fucked up shit we're going to be talking about today. And if you know anything about the Fabulous Moolah, you know we're going to be talking about allegations of sexual abuse and pimping out and things like that. If you don't want to hear about that, then change the channel. Go do something else, because all that's coming. This is more fucked up than you could possibly imagine. The fact is so fucked up that at the end of this, we're doing a palate cleanser. We're going to talk about, even though she never won the world title, we're going to talk about Mae Young.
Okay.
Just because she's a guilty pleasure. I'm a big fan. I don't have any proof of this, but I believe that I made contact with her on a Facebook account, like a private Facebook account. I think she didn't know how to make it into one of the celebrity accounts or whatever.
Okay, yeah.
Because it had almost the overload of like the max friends you could have.
Okay. Okay.
And the extent of the contact was I asked her if she was Mae Young, and she said, yes, it's Mae. And that was the extent of that conversation.
Right.
So I want to believe it was Mae Young.
Oh,
I believe it was.
We'll just go with, how long ago was this?
It was probably about 3 or 4 years before she died.
Okay. All right.
So, I mean, it wasn't that long ago. So, I was wrong about the women's title history. Cora Livingston, 1906.
Cora Livingston,
1906. First women's world champion, okay? So there was another women's title that reunified with hers and she won that match a few years later. This is on Wikipedia for the Women's World Championship. You can read it yourself. That's another thing about this episode. I got a lot more diverse sources here. I didn't just rip everything out of Wikipedia.
Okay.
Clara Mortensen, wait a minute. We'll go back to Cora Livingston.
Mm-hmm.
She retired in 1925. Clara Mortensen defeated Barbara Ware to win the vacant title in 1932.
Okay.
So we're already getting into the 30s.
All right.
So
was she the title? She held the title from 06 to 25.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Women held the title for a very long time back
Mm-hmm.
then. And you'll see more of that in a minute. So, gosh, I don't know how to pronounce this website or this YouTube channel, I should say. Jobbed Out, I think is how you say it, on YouTube. On his channel, he explained that women's wrestling entered a dark age where there were few women wrestlers, there were mud wrestling matches, and women's wrestling was treated as a sideshow. So from 1906 up until the 30s, women were relegated to mud wrestling, and it was like a sideshow. It wasn't really respected. There were very few women wrestlers. So enter Mildred Burke. Mildred Burke was like Lou Thez, Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and The Rock combined.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
All of them.
Yes.
Okay.
When it comes to women's wrestling.
Okay, so I don't want to hear any more shit about LA Knight ripping off Stone Cold and The Rock because Mildred Burke was the OG.
Yes, Mildred Burke was the OG. And I was really disappointed in myself because I realized when I was doing this research that most of what I knew about women's wrestling stopped at Fabulous Moolah.
Okay.
And anything that happened before her, I didn't know a whole lot about.
Right.
And Mildred Burke is a hero of women's wrestling, especially one that we need now, given the controversy and everything that came up regarding Moolah. It's hard for people to look at her as a female wrestling hero.
Yeah.
And Mildred Burke was it. Okay. This comes from WWE.com.
Okay.
She became a sensation in the 30s. She wrestled against men and women. She captured the Women's World Championship shortly after debuting. She fought and beat challengers such as Gladys Killam Gillum and Mae Young. She also trained Moolah and Bertha Faye and numerous others she was involved in the training of.
Okay.
So Mildred Burke was just freaking awesome. Okay. And I'm going to talk a lot more about her soon. So Jim, one of the things that Jim Cornette has talked about in his podcast is that women's wrestling historically,
right,
for the 80s was very different than men's wrestling as far as how it was promoted and things like that. So the territories would have their group of wrestlers, and guys would go from territory to territory, but women's wrestling was almost like I don't know how to describe it. Like, basically, a promoter would have a group of women wrestlers, and he would find work for the women to do.
Okay.
And it would be all over the place. So he might have someone go here and then there and so forth and so forth. And this promoter was pretty much in absolute complete control.
Right.
Like a manager and a promoter.
Right.
For these women at the same time. He was in complete control, or she was in complete control in the case of the Fabulous Moolah.
Right.
So you can see already where this is ripe for abuse.
Right,
and things like that. It's already.
It sounds like pimping to me.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we're getting into that.
Right.
It's bad. It's bad. And so Mildred Burke was the wife of one of those promoters, and I'll get into that in a little bit more. But before we get into the fucked upness, I want to talk a little bit more about Mildred Burke's career. So, according to the Fabulous Moolah herself in her book, The Fabulous Moolah, First Goddess of the Squared Circle, written in 2003, and I found that in Wikipedia. She was cited a lot of times in that article.
Okay.
Burke wanted to wrestle and approach Billy Wolf, who would become her husband at some point in the future. And she wanted to wrestle.
Mm-hmm.
Billy Wolf was tired of her bothering him and said, I'm going to have this guy body slam her so that she'll quit bothering me.
Okay.
So the guy goes over there to body slam her.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, she picks him up and body slams him. Okay. So Mildred Burke was, if you haven't seen a picture of her, you got to get online.
Okay.
Google her. Google image search Mildred Burke. She was a beast. Okay. She was like, she was a beast. She was very, very muscular.
Mm-hmm.
And I read in the WWE article that she was from Los Angeles, that the LAPD police department had a poster of Mildred Burke in their office to shame the cops for being out of shape because she was built. I mean, she had like muscle. She was very muscular.
Right.
And in her career, she wrestled over 200 men, and she only lost one match against a man.
Oh, my God.
Okay, so let's think about this. Now, Fabulous Moolah doesn't specify whether or not these were shoot or work matches.
Okay.
If I had to take a guess,
Yeah.
I would say they were worked.
Right.
Seeing as how by the 30s, most of wrestling was worked at this point in time, as we've discussed in previous episodes. But I don't think it matters.
Right.
This woman beat
Yeah.
over 200 men in the 1930s.
30s, yeah.
When women had like hardly any rights.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It was.
So these promoters and bookers thought enough of her to put her over men.
Yes.
Well, I mean, that's saying something.
That's saying a lot.
So, you know, she's muscular, like you say, so she might have been more physically imposing than some of the men she faced anyway.
Right, that's possible.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the men that she faced, but it's very possible.
Right.
And, you know, back then, wrestlers weren't really hulking huge.
Right.
So if she was bulked up, I mean, she might have looked more muscular than most of the men that she wrestled against.
Right.
It's very possible.
Yep.
Because, I mean, I've seen the pictures of her. I mean, she was, built. So
I have to look into that a little bit and see if she was kind of ahead of her time on you know, training and lifting and things.
And you got to think, she didn't have steroids and stuff.
Right,
and
right.
testosterone and all that other crap that, you know, people do nowadays.
This is probably something that I can research a little bit because George Hackenschmidt, along with being a wrestler, was also a strongman.
Yes, he was.
So he was just an overall just great athlete. So you know, Mildred Burke might have been the same. You know, of course, I don't know about her training or anything, but that'd be something to look into.
Well, I've never seen anybody with genetics just be like bulk.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
You got to put some work into it.
Yeah. Right. Nobody just looks like that. You gotta work for it.
Yeah, she had to work hard to stay in shape. So, okay, so this next part is about to be the fucked upness pretty soon. Okay.
Okay.
So, this was written by Tim Hornbaker in National Wrestling Alliance, The Untold Story of the Monopoly That Strangled Pro Wrestling. Okay. Apparently it was published by ECW Press, although it was 2007, so I don't think it was Extreme Championship Wrestling Press.
Right.
So Mildred Burke wound up marrying Billy Wolf. They got close to each other through everything that they did together. So here's the crazy part. Billy Wolf would act like a father figure to the women he trained.
Right.
He was the guy that was over the group, promoter, manager of most of the women wrestlers.
Right.
Women wrestlers could go to. It was possible for them to find some work outside of going through the proper channels at the time, but it was very hard. It was very hard for a woman to succeed that way. I mean, it was pretty much impossible.
Yep.
And you'll find out why. So, Billy Wolf would act like a father figure to the women he trained, and he took advantage of them sexually, according to the allegations at the time. And I don't think this is disputed stuff from anybody. I mean, there's so much evidence out there. So I'm going to skip saying allegations. I'm just going to say he did it. Okay. I'm just going to say he did it. I know he's dead and he can't defend himself, but there's just so much evidence that he did all this crazy shit.
And all this happened while him and Burke were married.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Although they eventually separated. We'll get into that.
Right.
So, well, we're going to get into that right now. The adultery came to a head, and I mean, to me, it was worse than adultery. He was pimping out the women to promoters, to wrestlers.
Yeah.
He was having sex with them himself.
Right.
I mean, it was just disgusting. Later on, the Fabulous Moolah, well, when we get into her, he tried to have sex with her. I mean, it was just crazy.
Yeah,
it was crazy.
Yeah.
So it's about to get. That's a nervous laughter. In case you wonder what Lance is doing, this is some fucked up shit. Okay.
Yeah.
So I promise our podcast will be funnier most of the time, but this is not funny. This is fucked up. So because of their separation, Mildred Burke found herself frozen from all opportunities. Okay. So, and we're still talking about Tim Hornbaker here. So, you know, we agreed to not talk about politics, but I think almost everybody can agree that there was a lot of discrimination for women back then, especially women in male-dominated professions.
Right.
The discrimination and the treatment and abuse towards women in professional wrestling was appalling. It was completely appalling. So after the separation and they started going through a divorce, the NWA tried to get them to reconcile, and that failed. The only thing they were able to come to agreement about was that one would sell out to the other. So Burke volunteered to sell to Wolf for Burke's Attractions Incorporated. Wolf, from my understanding, pushed this company into bankruptcy, and it was sold. 8 months later, the new owner named Wolf as the administrator. So that's like, so he kept this company and the money away from Burke. Okay, it gets worse. It gets much worse, okay? A memorandum dated August the 20th, 1953 was circulated by Wolf in which he boldly announced that he was the booker for Burke and her stable of 27 wrestlers. The claim was disputed by Burke on August the 26th, 1953, by stating that the issue would be settled in the courts. She hoped that she would be vindicated by the National Wrestling Alliance at their September 1953 meeting in Chicago. Okay, so here's the deal about the NWA. At this time, women were banned from the NWA conferences, and this diminished the importance of women in professional wrestling.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember. I've watched a lot of documentaries and stuff preparing for this day. We're doing this podcast.
Yep.
I don't remember who said it. I don't remember. I think it was Mae Young, but it might have been the Fabulous Moolah. One of them said that there was a lot of heat on women's wrestling because when the women, back then they called them lady wrestlers, when they came out and fought, they basically stole the show.
Right.
So the male wrestlers, the guy wrestlers, had resentment against the female wrestlers. They would do their same old tired song and dance, and these women would come out there, and remember how they were promoted. They were cross-promoted among territories and stuff like that, so they were fresh, new to the crowd, and they would just go out there and beat the hell out of each other. And so the fans were really into it. And I actually watched some matches on YouTube from this period of wrestling. And I watched Mildred Burke in particular, and I watched matches with Mae Young, and the fans were into it. They were really into it. Most of the time when you watch those old wrestling matches, the fans are just kind of sitting there dead.
Oh, yeah.
Until something actually happens. But in these videos, the fans were just really into the women wrestling matches. Wolf was in the meeting. Imagine getting in trouble. Imagine going to court and your ex is testifying against you, and you're not allowed to sit in there. You have to sit in the hallway outside while your ex is testifying against you.
Right.
That's basically what she had to deal with.
Yep.
He made up all kinds of shit about her, okay? He said that she said that she would only wrestle one woman, and that's it. Just terrible shit. And she had to sit in the lobby. Actually, she had to sit in the lobby of the hotel, the Blackstone Hotel in Chicago, while they argued about her future. Wolf's voice was the only one heard. In the end, the NWA decided, according to what I read in Wikipedia, I don't know exactly what this statement meant, but they decided to decline to recognize women's wrestling. And I'm like, did they just decline to recognize women's wrestling as a whole? Wolf regained his stake. There were a lot of women that were loyal to Burke, and they refused to wrestle for Wolf. In a letter to NWA members on November the 4th, 1953, Burke refuted Wolf's claim that she would only wrestle one woman grappler. She claimed that there were 12 grapplers with who she would work with. Now, remember, there wasn't a whole lot of women wrestlers back then. So
right.
12 was pretty good. Wolf used his influence to get her frozen out of all opportunities in the National Wrestling Alliance.
Wow.
Yeah. She wrestled Wolf's daughter-in-law, June Byers, and there was genuine heat between the two. The match took place on August the 20th, 1954 in Atlanta. Wikipedia says that according to John F. Molinaro and Top 100 Pro Wrestlers of All Time, it was a grudge match that quickly became a shoot fight. Her ex-husband's daughter-in-law is who she's faced with, and now it turns into a shoot fight. You couldn't write this shit. Wolf had the support of the local commission, and in this ring was a bought official.
Okay.
The referee was bought and paid for, basically. And Burke said that she gave up the first fall with the intention of competing stronger in the second.
Right.
Second fall never had to finish. Official calls the match. Burke thinks that she is still the champion.
Right.
Because she had not lost two falls. The result was, in fact, in the press, that Byers had defeated her, and the importance of Burke's championship began to diminish. Like, where do you even begin with this? Like, and we're not even done yet. We're still talking about Mildred Burke and how she was fucked over. I mean,
over and over again.
Yeah.
I mean, just an endless barrage.
Yeah. I mean, it's depressing. It's depressing as all hell. I mean, it's blatant discrimination. Like I said, Wolf was a despicable human being. I mean, he was terrible. I don't know if he abused Burke in the way that he abused other women, but obviously his treatment towards her was traumatic. It had to have been traumatic to her with all this shit. Yeah. And I don't know what to say. This is a hero of women's wrestling. And we're going to talk about it a little bit more. She brought wrestling to like all the states women's wrestling.
Right.
So all the states, Japan and Mexico, okay? Like, I don't know if women, you know how women's wrestling in Japan's like really, really freaking huge.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would have been as huge as it is without the influence of Mildred Burke.
Right.
I don't know if women's wrestling would be where it is without Mildred Burke.
You know, this sounds like the Montreal Screwjob.
It's worse than the Montreal.
Yeah.
It's if Bret Hart and Vince McMahon were lovers,
Yeah.
and they separated,
Yeah.
and then Vince screwed Bret.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's worse than the Montreal Screwjob. I mean, it's just terrible.
Mm-hmm.
It's terrible. Not to diminish the Montreal Screwjob. I mean, that was awful too. I mean, obviously it had a big impact on Bret, and it had a big impact on wrestling in general. But this was just obscene. So, all right. So Wikipedia. So in the early 1950s, Burke started the World Women's Wrestling Association in Los Angeles, California. So she returned to her promotion after the screw job with Byers, still recognizing herself as the World Women's Champion, even after the NWA recognized Byers as champion.
Right.
And continued to defend the belt. She vacated the title in 1956 when she retired from professional wrestling. In 1970, the title was revived by All Japan Women's Pro Wrestling as their top prize. This title made it into the 2000s, past the 2000s. I don't remember what year it was vacated. I think it was when All Japan Women's Pro Wrestling, I guess, closed or whatever.
Right.
But there was actually an event where they briefly revived the title as recently as 2017.
Holy shit.
That title, so we're talking about lineages here. That's our main focus is lineages.
Right.
That title has a direct lineage to Cora Livingston.
Cora Livingston.
1906.
1906.
Yes. So, I mean, without a doubt, the legitimate world champion was Mildred Burke.
Right.
So, honestly, that belt, which is sadly now vacated, in my opinion, has the biggest claim to being the real world championship for women.
So it sounds like everyone in wrestling as a whole, at least eventually, continued to recognize Burke as a champion even after this screw job with Byers.
I don't know how much it was recognized by the fans at the time. Obviously, the NWA didn't recognize it. Obviously, Japan recognized it. They said, "Yeah, bring the title over. You know, we want this." You know, Mildred Burke also was one of the first female wrestlers to tour Japan, along with Mae Young.
Okay,
that's another fact about her. So her efforts, she spread women's wrestling internationally, and it reached Japan and brought about the worldwide Women's Wrestling Association. Okay, so it evolved. And it says here, she introduced women's wrestling to several countries, every state, almost every state in the United States, Canada, Cuba, Mexico, Japan, Hong Kong, Macau, the Philippines. And All Japan Women's Pro Wrestling bought the legal rights of the WWA World Championship from her and later created the WWA World Tag Team Championship in 1971 and the All-Pacific Championship in 1977. So there was some other things that spun off from this.
Yep.
So if you watch NWA programming now, the NWA women's title is the NWA World Women's Championship specifically. It's the specific name of the title. And I use the word title, folks. I'm not like Vince McMahon. Belts, titles. I like all those words. I call it wrestling. I don't give a fuck, okay? The NWA World Women's Championship is now simply known as the Burke And I was really confused by that
Uh-huh.
whenever I was downloading belts on WWE 2K23.
And they named it the Burke.
They named it the Burke.
Okay.
And I'm like, I knew who Mildred Burke was,
Right.
was a famous
Right.
wrestler in wrestling history, but I didn't understand it. But now that I've read up on it, I
Right.
understand it. So Mildred Burke, I mean, what she had to go through,
Mhm.
and the fact that she was able to dust herself off after being basically banished from
Right.
American wrestling and have a career overseas in Japan and do all this stuff. I mean, she was a major champion.
Yep.
I mean, a champion in real life. I don't think we're ever going to have anybody like her again. And what Billy Wolf did to her and to all of those other wrestlers is just despicable. And here's the thing. A lot of people look at what Moolah did, and I imagine most of the listeners know what Moolah did to some extent, or at least the allegations against Moolah.
Right.
It adds a lot more perspective when you look at it that Moolah's predecessor was Billy Wolf. The allegation, if we believe the allegations against Moolah,
Mm-hmm.
Moolah basically continued the abuse and all the terrible crap
Yep.
that she learned from Billy Wolf, even though she was a survivor of that herself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, why? Why? So, Moolah even said in her book, and this is one of the things that I just couldn't understand. Moolah said in her book that, and I read some excerpts of her book. I didn't read the whole thing.
Right.
But she said that she actually felt sorry for Billy Wolf because he had a lot of personal tragedies later in his life.
Wow.
And I'm like, why would she feel sorry for that guy? I mean,
Wow.
I mean, he did terrible stuff to her, and so I don't know. I don't understand that.
Oh man,
We're
that's
about to talk about one of those tragedies. According to ProWrestlingStories.com, and by the way, we might be using y'all stuff for more citations in the future because y'all have got some good shit. Oh my God. I was like, man, how have I not seen this website before? Javier OJST. I'm not going to try to pronounce that name. He talked about how Janet Boyer Wolf at the age of 18 collapsed in the ring. I don't know if it was the third match or fourth match. I saw some contradicting information about that. So, you notice the last name Wolf, right?
Yeah.
So, Billy Wolf, Janet went to Billy Wolf trying to become a wrestler at age 16.
Okay.
Billy Wolf was like, no. And so she bulked up some more,
Mm-hmm.
came back, and he's like, okay, I'll train you.
Okay.
And she's 17. Her mother is widowed. Billy says, I want you to be my daughter. So, according to Billy Wolf, she was adopted.
Okay.
Now, what Mildred Burke thought about that, we don't know. We don't know if she supported it or if she was angered by it. Billy Wolf kind of did whatever he wanted.
Right.
In fact, Burke, in her unpublished biography, didn't mention anything about her. Okay. So it was a tag match. I don't know if this is the right pronunciation of the name. Ella Waldick and Mae Young against Ava Lee and Janet Wolf in a tag match. Prior to this tag match, Janet mentioned that she was having headaches. There was something going on.
Okay.
She started having some sort of health episode during the match after a body slam
Okay.
by Ella Waldick. And a doctor was in the crowd, rushed and said, okay, this is an emergency. Something's going wrong with her.
Right.
She died in the hospital from a traumatic rupture of her stomach and a subdural hematoma, hemorrhage in her brain. Mae Young, Waldeck, and Lee get arrested. They're held in a hotel room because there was no women facilities at the local jail.
Okay.
Yes. They get arrested, and they get questioned at the hotel. There were no charges pressed because there was nothing unusual that happened in the match. There's nothing but speculation on what occurred there. We just don't know. So what I've read about it, it seems like she had a blood clot that formed well prior to that match.
Right.
And it was just a bad luck that after a body slam.
Right.
And she was already having headaches and stuff from a match previously.
Yeah.
That this happened. Also, Mae Young in the documentary Lipstick and Dynamite, the First Ladies of Wrestling, she said that Billy Wolf, really pushed Janet very hard in her training. Also, it's possible that maybe she didn't protect herself well because she was new to the ring.
Right.
And when she got the body slam. Interestingly, this had an effect on Ella Waldeck's career, because she was a heel. She's the one that body slammed her. Now, a body slam back then was like a big freaking deal.
Yeah.
That was like a finishing maneuver.
It was like a tope suicida back then.
Yeah, or like an F5. Because a tope suicida is like an arm drag now. It's like a headlock takedown. Yeah. At least in the AEW.
Yeah.
Almost said AWA. We're going retro here. So, Janet, she dies in the ring. And Waldeck the fans they blamed her. She was already a heel. And Waldeck the fans would scream out to her murderer.
Wow.
During her matches.
Oh, man.
Now, in an unintentional way, that helped her career because she was a heel.
She was a heel, yeah.
And people thought
she was a killer. She was a real killer.
Yeah. So
the promoters just used it, just promoted her as that.
Well, I don't think they used it, but they didn't stop it.
Right. Yeah.
So actually, Mae Young, she wasn't even the one that slammed her or whatever, and apparently she carried a lot of guilt.
Yeah.
Later in the life.
Oh yeah.
According to the Fabulous Moolah.
Yep.
That she had a lot of guilt about this incident, and I'm like, how did I not know that Moolah was in a match where someone died in the ring?
Yeah.
Like that's just that's just crazy that happened. So that also happened to Mildred Burke and Billy Wolf, although we don't know what the connection was between Janet Wolf and Mildred Burke and what their relationship was like. I don't think we'll ever know. There's a lot of stuff that's just lost to time when it comes to women's wrestling. I mean, there's just so much that we just don't know as far as what happened. But what do you think about all this, Lance?
It sounds like a lot of this was covered up because, like you said, you're somebody that's watched wrestling your whole life. You know a lot about it just by watching it and reading about it and all this. But there's a lot of stuff here you didn't know. So to me, it sounds like this was intentionally covered up, intentionally not talked about.
That's very possible. Like, I mean, even. We actually have a connection to all of this because we actually got to witness Mae Young and the Fabulous Moolah wrestle in our lifetime.
Yep.
So we have like 1 degree of separation from Mildred Burke.
Right.
I talked to Mae Young and she's talked to Mildred Burke.
Right.
So I have 1 degree of separation between me and Mildred Burke.
Yep.
And so, I didn't know about all this. And pro wrestling stories, man, there is so much stuff there. So much stuff there. It's definitely worth your time to take a look at it. Yeah, a lot of stuff that probably didn't get talked about a lot.
Yeah.
I know the stuff that we're going to talk about with Moolah didn't get talked about a lot because it didn't come up until like many years later.
Right.
So there you go. And, you know, I hate the situation with Moolah because I watched her. I mean, I've known about the Moolah, Fabulous Moolah my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
I remember reading, like, I had this book that, like, my parents found at, like, some kind of, like, flea market that was, like, all the top wrestling stars. And it had, like, their biography and the picture, and she was in there.
Yep.
And, you know, she had her famous second career with
Mm-hmm.
the WWF and the WWE. And, you know, the whole comedic duo thing with Mae Young was just awesome.
Yeah.
And you hear about all this ugliness. And Billy Wolf, what a monster.
Yeah.
It's incomprehensible what he did.
Yep.
And I talk about all this because I wanted, the main thing though is I don't want to focus on Billy Wolf so much. I would like for everybody to focus on Mildred Burke.
Yeah.
I only bring up Billy Wolf because that is what she had to deal with and overcome.
Yep.
And what an impossible task. And Mildred Burke survived all this stuff and brought wrestling, women's wrestling, to the world, okay?
Yep.
In a time when women's wrestling was banned in certain states, it was banned in certain cities, and she was beating up men.
Yep.
She was beating up men.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it was shoot or work or whatever, but it doesn't matter. Somebody thought she was good enough, or she was good enough to beat men.
Right.
And either way, it still counts in the world of professional wrestling.
Right.
It doesn't matter if it's a shoot or work. You still
Yep.
got over. And that's what matters at the end of the day is that she went over. She lost one match to a man. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's ever been a woman in history that can claim that record.
Right.
If there is one, I don't know about it. I can't think of one, honestly, that has beaten over 200 men. Usually if there's an intergender match, it's an indie thing, and not a whole lot of people know about it. So
Yep.
it's and she was doing intergender matches in the 30s, guys. I mean, how can I stress it even more than what I am? In the 30s.
Yeah.
In the 30s when, like, you know how backward it was in the 30s. It was
Yeah.
backwards.
Yes. Yes.
It was so backwards back then. And she was doing that. And it was just amazing. And the way that the NWA treated her, I'm really glad that now they've renamed the title the Burke. I guess
Yeah.
probably unofficially, obviously.
The nickname.
Yeah, the nickname, the Burke,
Yep.
because the NWA treated her so terribly.
Right.
So for them to honor her, I think is great that they understand that their legacy when it comes to women's wrestling is terrible.
Right.
And that's one way to correct it is
Mhm.
to acknowledge the person that the organization screwed over probably worse than anybody.
Yep.
That was a real champion and was a champion of humanity. And so for them to do that, I just think it's excellent that they're doing that now. I don't know whose idea that was, but it was a really, really good idea.
Yep.
And so if it wasn't for Mildred Burke, a lot of places would not have women's wrestling, and women's wrestling wouldn't be to where it is today. And there's another point of all this, too. We're going to talk about the legacy of the Fabulous Moolah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Did Moolah help women's wrestling, or did she hurt women's wrestling? Obviously, her predecessor, Mildred Burke,
Yeah.
left women's wrestling in a good place.
Yes.
Until the NWA
Mm-hmm.
did what they did. Oh, that's another thing, too. Suddenly, after Mildred Burke was no longer the champion because of the screw job,
Right.
suddenly they started having women's wrestling a lot again. That was another thing too. So there's just a lot there. But Mildred Burke left women's wrestling in the greatest possible shape that a person could leave it.
Right.
And so you become the next big star of women's wrestling.
Yeah.
And how do you leave it? And that's what we're going to be talking about in a little bit. The NWA recognized Mildred Burke as the inaugural champion in 1950. And after the no contest match with the screw job, Byers was recognized as the NWA World Women's Champion. And Burke created that, like we mentioned before, the WWA World Championship, and was recognized as his first champion. And upon June Byers' retirement, it was held primarily and operated by Lillian Ellison under the ring name The Fabulous Moolah, who first won the championship in a battle royal in September of 1956. So now we're talking about The Fabulous Moolah. Oh, my God.
And here we go.
The mixed feelings about The Fabulous Moolah, okay? We already gave a content warning. There's about to be a bunch of fucked up shit. We didn't stop with Billy Wolf. So the thing that there are some accomplishments of Moolah that we just can't deny. Well, I don't want to compare the two, but there's other wrestlers that have done controversial things that have died that were worse than, or maybe less. I don't know. I mean, how do you compare evil? I don't know. I mean, but there were things that other wrestlers did that they did in their career that was amazing, but they had personal lives that were terrible. Now with Billy Wolf, I didn't give him benefit of the doubt. I accused him of everything.
Yeah.
I will say that Moolah has allegations against her, and she also has people who support her. And then she has a lot of people that are in between. There are some fucked up things that we know for sure that Moolah did. Right. But the extremely fucked up things are allegations. So I want to separate that. We know that she took money from the wrestlers that operated under her. Right. That she even said that herself. She defended it in an interview that I saw, where she basically said that I wrote a contract and they signed the contract stating that I would get a percentage as their booker. I hate to say it, but that's business. That's business.
They didn't have to sign it.
They didn't have to sign it. No, it's business. I mean, was it exploitative? You can argue that.
Yeah.
But was it?
Because if they wanted to wrestle, it's not like they had much of a choice.
Yeah.
So it was either take that deal or nothing.
Right. Yeah. And this is how Moolah made her living.
Right.
I mean, and also there's a lot of people that say that she didn't actually train the wrestlers that were in her school.
Right.
That she had the older trainees train the younger trainees. But, I mean, you're the boss. You decide how it happens.
Right.
As long as the wrestlers are ready when it comes ring time, that's all that matters.
Yep.
So, you can defend her on that too. There are allegations that are indefensible, if they're true. So I'm going to get at all of that in a minute, but let's talk about what Moolah did, okay?
Okay.
So the WWE claims that Moolah held the she held the title, the world title, for 28 years. Okay, that's bullshit. Okay. You can it's even on the WWE.com website. Her biography, it says that she held the title for 28 years from 1956 to whatever 28 years is, 1983 or whatever it was that she lost it.
So is that just flat out bullshit, or
it's flat out bullshit,
or are they somehow using some kind of, I don't know, some other title that didn't count or something? I don't know.
They're invalidating title changes that occurred where other people held the title briefly.
Okay.
Like very briefly.
Right.
Okay. Now, here's the thing that is true. The Fabulous Moolah held the NWA title 4 times, which was a record.
Right.
Her reign was not 28 years.
Mm-hmm.
One of her reigns was for 3,651 days.
Which is just over 10 years.
Yeah. A record.
Right.
And she dominated women's wrestling for a 28-year period.
Mm-hmm.
She was the most prominent holder of the NWA title during this time. So there were times that she would lose the belt, and then shortly afterwards, when you talk about 10-year title reigns,
Yeah.
her losing the belt for 2 weeks ain't shit.
Right.
You know, so that's what happened with the Fabulous Moolah. So the WWE just decided not to recognize those title switches, kind of like the NWA, but they kind of did it. Well, they did it retroactively. Like,
Right.
We're not recognizing title reigns that happened in the past. Well, the NWA said we're not recognizing title reigns that happen, now.
Right.
So, also, here's a side note. I planned on this episode ending in 1995, but there's some information in this podcast that's going to be episode that's going to be past 1995. In 1999, she became the oldest champion in history of professional wrestling up to that point in time, until Pat Patterson later won the 24/7 championship.
Right.
When she won the women's championship, the WWF Women's Championship, for a final time at the age of 76. Okay?
Yep.
That happened.
Yep.
Okay? So now we're talking about Wikipedia and also the excerpts that I read from her book, First Goddess of the Squared Circle. And, of course, she doesn't talk about anything bad that she did. Okay?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, just we're going into that knowing that there's no allegations of like rampant sexual abuse in her book that she wrote about herself. So one of the first things, one of her first gimmicks was, gosh, what was it? I think it was like Slave Girl Moolah or something like that.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Yes. How horrible to give someone that gimmick.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. They didn't let her wrestle at first. She was a valet at first, okay? Yeah. She was a valet to the Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, but he came on to her sexually, and she got away from him.
Right.
Okay. Billy Wolf tried to sleep with her, but she managed to resist him somehow. But, of course, Billy Wolf and Moolah weren't on great terms with each other, probably because of stuff like that. And Wolf held a grudge against her, and that provided a challenge for her career.
Yeah.
She was almost stabbed when she kissed a Mexican wrestler that she was managing because he had very dark skin, and the man thought the wrestler she was the valet for was a black man.
Oh, my God.
In Oklahoma City. And I saw a picture of that guy. He looked, I could see why they would make that.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, it's still fucked up.
It's fucked up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Try to stab her
Yeah.
for kissing what they thought was a black man.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, my
Wow.
God. And, here's the thing. If the legacy wasn't tainted by all this bullshit, she would be a dedicated champion of women's wrestling, for enduring this kind of bullshit. And, whether she, regardless of what she did deal with all this shit. September the 18th, 1956, Moolah defeated Judy Grable in a 13-woman battle royal to win the vacant World Women's Championship, which shares a lineage with the NWA World Women's Championship. This was not immediately recognized by everyone as the NWA. She was not immediately recognized by everyone as the NWA champion because Billy Wolf.
Okay, here he comes again.
This motherfucker.
Yeah. God damn.
With whom she had conflict earlier in her career, still control the promotion.
Jesus Christ.
Yes, this motherfucker keeps coming back.
Oh, man.
We have to deal with him until he dies.
Uh,
I mean,
so what was the reason this time? Because she wouldn't sleep with him?
that was at least part of it.
Right.
A good part of it, if not all of it.
Oh, man, this is awful.
Yeah. And also, Moolah was paving her own way.
Right.
And that's not what you do
Yeah.
when Billy Wolf's around.
Right.
As we've learned from Mildred Burke in her situation. After the match, Vince McMahon Sr. dubbed Ellison with a new ring name, the Fabulous Moolah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where she got the name. No more slave girl Moolah. None of that bull.
Right.
Fabulous Moolah. When June Byers retired in 1964, Moolah was subsequently recognized as the official NWA champion. And we remember who June Byers was from earlier. So she was the one that was the daughter-in-law to, Billy Wolf, Satan, and once she was out of the picture, the NWA was able to recognize her as the official NWA champion.
Okay, so between 56 and 64, she wasn't recognized as the champion.
Not by the NWA.
Okay.
She was the world women's champion,
Right.
but unrecognized by the NWA.
Okay.
But once she was recognized by the NWA, then she became the undisputed women's world champion.
Okay.
So does that make sense?
Yep.
So in 1972, July the 1st, Moolah became the first woman allowed to wrestle at Madison Square Garden. Okay, prior to this, women were not allowed to wrestle in the state of New York. And this is the year 1972.
Wow.
In the 70s,
fucking hell.
when the 70s started,
Yeah.
there were still 7 states that banned women's wrestling.
Wow. And New York was one of them.
Yeah. I forgot to mention this earlier. When I was talking about Janet Wolf's death,
Yeah.
after her death, there were calls about banning women's wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I read this quote in a newspaper. It was some like crazy shit. It was talking about we're allowing women to maul each other. And when was the last time you seen someone open a door for a woman? I mean, just insanity.
Wow.
You know? So women were not allowed to wrestle in 7 states by 1970, okay? 1972, Moolah became the first woman allowed.
Right.
It wasn't like she's the first one that wrestled there and like rose up the ranks and made it there. No, she was the first one allowed to wrestle in Madison Square Garden. She was also instrumental in making that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So she did break down barriers for women's wrestling.
Oh, yeah.
You can't deny it. And obviously, I threw this in here, too. The Fabulous Moolah defeated Ivory in 1999 to win the WWF Women's Champion and once again become the oldest champion at the time in the WWF history. This was an article or a citation, I should say, that I found in Wikipedia, I believe. It was from Steve Slagle. I think that's where I found it from. Hall of Fame, Fabulous Moolah. In the Ring Chronicle, it was. I think it was a link. It was a link. I want to say she bought the rights to the NWA World's Women's Championship in the late 1970s. So she owned the NWA title. I mean, this wasn't like a deposit like Ric Flair. I mean, she actually owned the title.
Mm-hmm.
In 1983, we know about Vincent Kennedy McMahon began expanding the World Wrestling Federation nationally. And Moolah sold the belt to him. Okay?
Right.
The belt.
Yep.
Moolah agreed to appear exclusively for the WWF and became the first WWF Women's Champion. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So I rewatched the Dark Side of the Ring episode about the Fabulous Moolah. Have you seen it, Lance?
I have not.
Okay. You need to watch it.
Okay.
It talks about her training with Billy Wolf and him coming on to her and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
The expectation was that women were to sleep with promoters and other wrestlers if you were a female wrestler at the time.
Yeah.
So she resisted all that shit. Once again, what I talked about earlier when I was talking about Jim Cornette explaining how women's wrestling worked, there was a promoter, and there's some things we know. Like I said, we know that she had women wrestlers pay her to wrestle.
Yeah.
That came out of the money. Now, there are some allegations that there was more that came out than what was actually agreed upon.
Okay.
Because these wrestlers never knew how much that Moolah got paid. And so there were people who allege that more than, maybe 25% went to Moolah.
Right,
and so
right.
forth. So we know about that. God. I got to prepare myself before I even go into this shit.
Okay.
There are allegations that she pimped out, much like Billy Wolf, women wrestlers to promoters and, God knows who.
Yeah.
Luna Vachon made an allegation, and I think she was underage at this time,
Oh, man.
that Moolah sent her to do a photography shoot,
Okay.
and she was clothed during the shoot, but she felt exploited by the situation.
Right.
I guess the dude was a creepster.
Yeah.
I don't know if she was 18 or not. I mean, she was young. Okay.
Yeah.
Some old creepy dude or whatever. I don't know if he's old, but I mean, that's what I imagined in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are allegations that she had sex with the wrestlers. She would abuse alcohol and have sex with the wrestlers. And because she had a compound, and she would train the wrestlers on a compound. And they were training in a structure that had no fans, no air conditioning.
Yeah. And
like I said, mostly the older trainees are training the newer trainees. And she was pimping them out. There were allegations that if the women did not consent to being pimped out, they were just sent to these guys. They didn't know what was going on. And then if they didn't consent to have sex, they were raped.
Oh, my God.
Yes. It's unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. There are detractors that support Moolah and say that they were not treated this way. Female wrestlers that were, said that, hey, I train under Moolah. Moolah did not treat me this way. I have no reason not to believe them.
Right.
But the one thing I know about abusers is that they will target people that are more vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so someone may have not have had anything happen to them because they were not as vulnerable.
Right.
It's also possible that she did a lot of this abuse early on, but didn't do it later. And that's why a lot of these women that are still...
Well, do we know the time period that these allegations happened?
Pretty much. I don't know exactly when they start, when they end.
Right.
But in that 28-year reign, she was it. Especially when the NWA recognized her.
Right.
So, yeah. Yeah, there was Sweet Georgia Brown and allegations about how she was treated in particular were quite awful. I mean, if you want to look them up, you can. I mean, and see, there's even been controversy about that because one time her son said that her daughter was making up allegations for X, Y, and Z reasons. But when he actually appeared on Dark Side of the Ring, he agreed that his mother was mistreated. So, I mean, what happened? I don't know if we'll ever know. There was one wrestler that I believe was a lesbian, and Moolah tried to force her to be into men.
Oh,
which
wow.
was, I guess, if the other allegation's true, hypocritical, seeing as how she had sexual relationships with women.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so much fucked up shit. I mean, you cannot, you couldn't make this up in a horror story of how fucked up all this shit is. And I have a hard time ignoring it.
Yeah.
Because it's just so many allegations, and it's, I don't know. It's allegations.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know all of it. She's dead.
Right.
We can't ask her about it. It might be a good thing she's dead. I don't know. It's pretty terrible stuff. I loved watching Moolah in the Attitude Era. Her and Mae Young. It was some good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's another fucked up thing. Now, this is something that I'm pretty sure I know is the truth about. Okay. The original screw job.
Okay.
Of Wendy Richter.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say something. When I started researching this shit, there was just a lot more that went on in women's wrestling than men's wrestling. Just a lot more just stuff. So the original screw job took place in 1985 when Wendy Richter, who was the WWF Women's Champion, was wrestling against the Spider Lady. Okay, so if you watch Dark Side of the Ring, the Spider Lady, she noticed, was bigger, heavier than what she normally saw her.
Okay.
And, of course, there was some people that said, well, she had to have known it was Moolah. Okay, but here's the thing. If you watch the footage, of the match, when the Spider Lady is pinning Wendy Richter, it's very clear and evident that Wendy is kicking out of the pin.
Okay.
And the referee still counts it down to 3 either way.
Right.
It was very obvious it was a screw job. I mean, it looked just like what happened between Brett and Shawn Michaels.
Oh, man.
I mean, we're like, Vince calls the match, and Brett trips Shawn.
Yeah. And
it's very clear that was not the expected finish of the match.
Right.
When you watch this match with Wendy and Moolah, it's exceptionally clear that this was not the planned finish of the match. Because why would she kick out? And why would she make it so obvious that she kicked out? Okay.
Yeah.
So she was screwed out of the belt, and Moolah got the belt again. And it was another screw job. So there you go. I mean, she's definitely not a saint. So I'm done talking about Moolah.
Okay. Can't take anymore.
I'm done talking about Billy Wolf.
Yeah.
I just want to remind everybody how awesome Mildred Burke was, and just go look at the pictures. I mean, she's just awesome.
Yeah.
Like her physique and the muscles and everything. She's awesome. And if you appreciate bodybuilding or anything like that, I mean, that's somebody you want to check out and Google. And it's done without steroids and drugs. I mean, it's old fashioned muscles, and she had them, and she beat the hell out of guys.
Yeah.
So the NWA Women's title continued its lineage after Moolah's belt was purchased and renamed by the WWF. I want to talk about the AWA World Women's Championship.
Okay.
So, this information came from Wikipedia. The original champion was June Byers, recognized as first champion when AWA splits from the NWA in 1960. The championship was established in 1961. It was held by names such as Medusa, Sherry Martel, and Vivian Vachon, who's the aunt to Luna Vachon, as well as Wendy Richter. It was deactivated in 1990 when the AWA closed. So kind of like the AWA Men's Championship.
Yeah, this title died along with it.
It died.
Yeah.
Even though it had lineage going back to Cora Livingston.
Cora Livingston.
1906.
1906.
Yes. So, once again, another title that claims lineage to. So, we've gotten to 4 belts now that claim lineage. See, I was ignorant when I was talking and out of the left side of my mouth or whatever about what was the women's situation. There's 4 belts now that we've discussed, and one of these belts still exists right now, which is the NWA title.
Right.
That belt still exists today. Gosh, what's her name that has it right now? Serena Deeb lost it to. Look it up, Lance. Who's the NWA World Women's Champion right now? I cannot remember her name right now. I love Serena Deeb, by the way. I just want to say that. I mean, she is just amazing. She was a really good NWA champion. I loved it whenever she would appear on AEW, and it was always just great to see her. I'm a fan of Serena Deeb. You see it, Lance? I'm gonna keep on while Lance is looking.
Keep going.
I'm gonna keep going. All right. This next part is a guilty fucking pleasure. It's a guilty fucking pleasure. We can bring the laughter back. This is the palate cleanser, okay? The Mae Young, the Johnny Mae Young palate cleanser, okay? Now, one of the things...
Camille.
Camille.
Okay, so Camille had it when I first started watching NWA in 2019.
Really?
Yeah. So she must have lost it and got it back.
That's what I'm saying. I didn't see that loss and regaining of it. Because I remember when AEW, Serena Deeb brought the belt onto AEW.
Yeah. I mean, AEW didn't come on TV until, 2021?
So she must have lost it to Serena Deeb and got it back, and it just may not be in Wikipedia.
I think so. Hang on. Let me see if I can see the reigns here. Yeah, they got the reigns here. Let me go all the way. Okay, so Camille has it. Let's see.
Well, I remember when I saw Serena Deeb on there, I remember thinking, like, I thought that she held the belt more recently than what it says.
No, I'm sorry. I got her mixed up with Allison Kay. Allison Kay had it. Allison Kay won it in April 2019. And then Thunder Rosa, and then Serena Deeb, and now Camille.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Sorry, I got her mixed up with Allison Kay.
Gotcha. Okay. So Mae fucking Young.
Mae Young, fuck yeah.
Yeah, Johnny Mae Young. Okay. So why am I talking about Mae Young? Well,
yeah,
first of
why
all,
is that?
First of all, because I fucking want to.
Yeah.
I fucking want to talk about Mae Young, God damn it. I needed to talk about Mae Young after all this shit. I got to talk about something funny and positive, okay? Mae the fuck Young, okay?
Yeah.
Mae Young may be my favorite women wrestler.
Yeah.
Back then, they called them lady wrestlers.
Yeah.
They call them women wrestlers nowadays. She's my favorite of both, okay?
Yep.
She's fucking awesome, okay? And I'm about to explain to you why she's awesome. Now, one of the things that I always wondered was, why did Mae Young never win the world title?
Why is that?
Well, I think it's very clear and apparent. Look at the eras that she mostly wrestled in.
Mm-hmm.
She wrestled in the era of Mildred Burke.
Yeah.
She wrestled in the era of the Fabulous Moolah.
Yeah.
When the fuck are you going to get the belt?
Yeah.
When the fuck are you going to get it?
Yeah.
With those two around.
Right.
That's like trying to be a baseball player when, like, fucking Babe Ruth and, all the other greats are, like, playing all at the same time, and you're just a small fish,
Right.
That's like trying to be a wrestler, in the WWE when, like, The Rock and Stone Cold and Rob Van Dam and everybody's just all awesome and shit,
Right.
You can't even call it that. You can't even compare it to that because back then, at least the belts would change hands.
Mm-hmm.
When Moolah and Mildred Burke were around, the belt didn't change hands.
Yeah.
The NWA had to screw Mildred Burke to get the belt out of her, and it was a fucking shoot match, okay? Yep. It was a shoot match. She went shoot on her, and they still had to screw her to get the belt.
Right.
It was a shoot, and it went to a no contest,
Right.
and they still had to screw her to get the belt.
Yep.
You couldn't get the belt from her by legitimate means.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you can't tell, I've become a Mildred Burke mark.
Right.
From all this shit after watching stuff and watching matches and that quote that I mentioned earlier, I think it was by Mae Young, that said that the male wrestlers were jealous of the female wrestlers. Man, they did beat the fuck out of each other back then. I watched some matches, man. I mean, they were stiff.
Right.
Stiff. I'm like, God. Because, I've watched a lot of wrestling from even back then, back in like the 50s and 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember having a tape growing up of, like, silver screen wrestling matches,
right,
several hours long. And I've watched quite a few matches, and my God, the matches were stiff. I mean, for that style back then, especially. Okay, so Mae Young. I just wanted to talk about Mae Young, so I'm talking about Mae Young. But also, she challenged for the women's title a bunch against Mildred Burke.
Mm-hmm.
And she was also always around the championship scene. So, according to her Hall of Fame induction speech that she gave in the WWE Hall of Fame, she was given a chance by Billy Wolf after beating Gladys Killam Gillum in a shoot match in seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So, we've heard that name before already, Gladys Killam Gillum.
Yeah.
Billy Wolf said, all right, fight her.
Mm-hmm.
And because, she was wanting to fight the champion. She was wanting to fight Mildred Burke. Mae Young, from the very first fucking day that she went into wrestling, wanted to fight Mildred Burke. Okay, day one, not an ounce of training. I'm going to fight Mildred Burke.
Right.
And why does she want to do it? Because she could beat her.
Right.
At least that's what she thought.
Right.
I don't know if she could have. Mildred Burke was a badass.
Yeah.
But, I don't know who would have won that fight. I would have loved to have seen it. If we could rearrange the universe and watch that match, let's do it. In a shoot fight. That is the match I want to. I'm gonna like make Mildred Burke and Mae Young on WWE 2K23, and I'm gonna have them fight, and it's gonna be a shoot match in my head. She was given a chance by Billy Wolf after beating Gladys Killam Gillum.
Mm-hmm.
She was literally wrestling the day that Pearl Harbor was bombed.
Wow.
Yes. This is a woman that we have seen wrestle live in our lifetime.
Right.
That was wrestling a match.
Yeah.
When Pearl Harbor got bombed.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad was born in 44.
Yeah.
And this woman was wrestling matches that long ago. She toured Japan with Mildred Burke, according to her Hall of Fame information on the WWE.com. Okay, so there's some debate of how many decades that she's wrestled.
Okay. Like actively wrestled.
Wrestled a match. Now, here's the thing. There's some debate about this.
Okay.
Okay. And Dave Meltzer doesn't give her a lot of credit. Okay. Dave Meltzer says that the number of different decades she wrestled in is 7.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, that's impressive.
What if I could tell you that it's 9?
Okay, you're going to have to explain that one.
Okay. So.
Was she 9 years old when she started?
Well, for one, she lived to be 90, okay?
Okay.
All right. So we know for sure that she was wrestling in 1941.
Okay.
The wrestling historians have narrowed it down.
Okay.
Okay. By the way, you also need to go look up pictures of Mae Young when she was, back then.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm not trying to objectify or anything, but she was beautiful.
Okay.
All right. So anyways, 1941, we know for sure that she wrestled. She claims 1939 is when she wrestled, when she was 16.
Okay.
Or she has claimed. But she's also given different dates at different times.
Okay.
So we know for sure 1941. But if she did wrestle in 1939, that would make it 8 decades. She also had a match in the 2010s.
Oh, man.
I don't remember what year it was, but
Right.
There was a match in the 2010s. Probably not long before she died.
Right.
That Dave Meltzer says you can't really call that a match. So he didn't give her credit for that one. But my God, it was a match.
But I mean, what do you mean you can't call it a match?
Yeah. When was that match? I gotta look this shit up. Mae Young. It was not really a big deal. I know that, but it was legacy. I was down here. It's not there. You would have to look it up regarding somewhere. How long? Dave Meltzer, maybe. It'll have something on there. Anyways, she had a match, and her 1990th birthday celebration was interrupted by CM Punk. That's interesting. Okay, on December the 31st, this was like 2012. On December the 31st episode of Raw, Mae Young was warming up for her match, and then Divas champion Eve Torres and began experiencing stomach cramps, as it was later determined that she had once again become pregnant and gave birth to Baby New Year, played by Hornswoggle. This was by James Caldwell, Pro Wrestling Torch.
Oh, my God.
Yes. She was like 90 and she was pregnant. That's wrestling. I mean,
Yep.
2010, she won a Falls Count Anywhere handicap match against Lay Cool, thus becoming the first person ever to wrestle over the age of 80, the first person to wrestle in 9 different decades, and her final stipulated. See, it's even in the same article, it disputes itself.
Right.
Okay. So that was by Keller Wade, and that was Pro Wrestling Torch. So, yeah, her match in 2010, in my fucking opinion, she's had that many decades of wrestling. 9 decades.
Yep.
Okay. So, but we know for sure that she was active in the business from 1941 to 2014. And possibly longer if we go back to 1939.
Right.
7 decades, if we give her the 7 decades as far as actual wrestling, she's tied with Lou Thez.
Okay.
As far as who's wrestled the most decades, she's tied with Lou Thez. In her Hall of Fame speech, she explains that she was the first Florida women's champion. Now, okay, there was some confusion about this. When you look up in Wikipedia about the NWA U.S. Women's Champion, you find women champions before U.S. Women Champions before Mae Young, but also Wikipedia says that she's the first NWA U.S. Women's Champion. I don't quite understand that. I don't know
Okay.
if there was a belt that was later recognized by the NWA,
Right.
and that was just previous reigns, and then
Mhm.
now they're recognized. I don't know. I don't understand it. I'm not gonna try to understand it. But that's there. All right. So now we get to discuss some of her hobbies in the 40s.
Right.
All right. This is kind of messed up stuff, but it doesn't change my opinion on Mae Young. I'm just sorry to say.
Right.
You'd have to convince me that she committed murder or something for me to not like Mae Young.
Uh-huh.
So there are allegations.
Mhm.
Allegations, Lance.
Yeah.
Allegations would not have not been proven true.
Okay.
That she would meet men in bars in the 40s,
Okay.
and then once she would go like somewhere with them, and you know,
Mhm.
be in a private setting with them,
Yeah.
she would mug them. she would mug them and take their money.
Like what? Like with a gun?
No, beat them up. With her fist.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
With her fist.
She mugged men with her fist.
Not with a gun. With her fist. I mean, if you like, once again, if you find the pictures of her,
Uh-huh.
I mean, she had some guns on
Yeah,
her.
yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
She wasn't weak.
Yeah.
I mean, my God, this is the woman that was 77 that got power bombed
Yeah.
through tables.
Yeah.
So she's tough. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
She would beat up men and take their money, according to allegations.
Right.
She got arrested several times for this. There were newspaper articles about this.
Okay.
There was one article that I saw that said that she and several other wrestlers were arrested for this. So maybe she ganged up on one of them.
Okay.
In the article, it described her as a cigar smoking lady wrestler.
Right.
Because you know she liked to smoke cigars.
Okay.
Even though she lived in the 90s somehow,
Right.
smoking cigars. So Mae Young beat
Uh-huh.
the ever living daylights out of these men
Yeah.
and took their money.
Yeah.
One guy was beaten so bad he was hospitalized.
Oh my god.
Now, do you know what her side of the story is?
Well, I want to hear this.
They tried to make a move on me, so I beat them up.
Oh man.
And like I
Wow.
established earlier,
Yeah.
she was beautiful back then.
Yeah.
So I guess the cops believed her
Yeah.
because she always got let go.
Yeah.
And I mean, and one guy went to the hospital. He was
Yeah.
beat up so bad.
I bet she giggled her ass off.
Oh my God. But you know, I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what happened.
Yeah.
I can't say for sure if they made moves on her, unwanted moves.
Yeah.
And she just defended herself, and
Mhm.
you know, and that's what happened. They just happened to have money missing afterwards because you know you get beat up and money just flies everywhere, and it goes missing sometimes.
Yep.
That's how I view it.
Mhm.
That's my opinion. All of this is my opinion. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
And that's my opinion that she defended herself,
Uh-huh.
and the money just went missing.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
or maybe they hid the money so they could say that they got mugged.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh man, this is great.
Yes. So, in the early 90s, she became an evangelist.
What the hell? Come on.
Yes. But she later renounced the evangelist lifestyle. Maybe she felt guilty for mugging all those guys in the 40s. The 50 years later,
Yeah.
she changed her ways. Mugging men. Oh, my God. She had a famous second career with the WWE.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, my God. It was...
This is where I learned about her. I'd never heard of her before this.
Yeah. I mean, she was all over the place in women's wrestling history before then,
Yeah.
and became famous to people our age
Mm-hmm.
with her second career as a comedic
Yeah.
partner in the comedic duo with her and the fabulous Moolah.
Yeah.
And Moolah would still take bumps when she was old, but Mae Young took bumps. Okay. So I have a note here. It just says discuss infamous power bombs at the age of 77 in the year 2000. Folks, if you haven't seen it, you got to look it up, okay? There are 2 power bombs done by Bubba Ray Dudley
Yeah.
in the year 2000, okay? And I'm about to cite something without a source because I don't remember where I heard this from, but so the first power bomb, there's a table, and of course, if you know anything about wrestling, the Dudley boys were all about power bombing and slamming 3Ding people through tables.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know why. I don't know what the reason for this was. It decided to be bad heels, but Bubba Ray power bombs Mae Young off the top rope through a table. Okay, at the age of 77. In the year 2000.
Yeah.
This woman was wrestling matches when the Japanese were bombing Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
And in the year 2000, she's getting slammed through tables at the age of 77.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I heard is that Bubba Ray, after the match, Moolah grabbed his arm. Because if you watch that power bomb,
Okay.
he did it perfectly. It was the I mean, as gentle as you can power bomb somebody through a table off the top rope.
Right.
It was as gentle as he could have done it.
Yeah.
And she grabbed him by the arm. She was disappointed in him. And she said, the next time you power bomb me, you power bomb me like a man. Yes. Yes.
Oh my God. Well, I remember he power bombed several women off the top rope through the table. I can't remember what that move was called. There was a name for it.
Yes.
But he would always power bomb them in a way that he was like holding them the whole time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like he would do a man where he would let the man like the guy go through the table. He would like hold them and he would go.
He would jump
table.
down. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He would go through the table while he's holding them. So. Yeah.
Okay. So, he did make it safer by doing it that way, but they didn't do a bump.
Yeah.
So first of all, Mae Young is selling the first power bomb by being in a wheelchair with a neck brace.
Yeah.
She's selling it, okay? Like, she's acting like she can't hardly move. She can't turn her neck, okay? Devon picks her up out of the wheelchair, puts her on Bubba Ray's shoulders. Bubba Ray power bombs her off of a stage, leaping through the air through a table or something.
Yeah.
Off the stage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, if you watch very closely, in that power bomb, Mae's right hand is squeezing the hand of Bubba Ray Dudley after the power bomb.
Okay.
It's a signal. I'm okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay, because, I mean, he just power bombed a 77-year-old woman off of a stage.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of concern.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And, I don't know what would have happened if, like, she didn't do that. Bubba Ray might have alerted them that something was wrong, I'm sure. Because he just does his orgasmic stare.
Yeah.
Afterwards.
Which is fucking great, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, and the fact that the fans are cheering this on.
Yes.
A 77-year-old woman, and Jim Ross sells it. He's like, my God, she's 80. And she's 80 years old, and like, and it was just,
and you know what? She was just trying to do business like she always had in her career. I mean, it came off as comedy and funny, but she's out there trying to put on a show, just like she always has. But it's just now she's 80. It's just, you know.
Yeah. Oh my God. There was also an angle where she was in a relationship with sexual chocolate Mark Henry.
Yes.
And she became pregnant. And then she had the baby, but it turned out not to be a baby. It was a bloody rubber hand.
Oh man. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. But yeah, Jim Ross, the commentary from Jim Ross is just freaking amazing.
Yeah.
You know, I tried to imitate it, but I don't know how well I can imitate. I got the Southern accent, but that's about it. But the commentary he did during that powerbomb was just amazing. Lord. So we're about to be closing up here soon. The WWF Women's Championship. Pro Screwjob, the title was defended. According to WWE, Rockin' Robin was the champion when the title was vacated in 1990. In 1993, now this is we're getting into territory that I actually remember personally.
Right.
Okay. So in 1993, the title returned with Alundra Blaze, who is better known as Medusa,
right?
I believe. So there were not a lot of women wrestlers at this time. This was a dark age in women's wrestling. You had Sherry Martel, but I don't know if it was 93 she went to WCW, but it'd be soon.
Right.
You had, and at this point she was just doing the manager thing. I don't know if that was by choice or by necessity. A lot of women wrestlers became managers around this time. Because,
right.
I mean, women's wrestling went through a dark age at this time, and it was bad. It was so bad that basically they had to get Japanese wrestlers from Japan to come over to wrestle Alundra Blaze,
right?
Like Bull Nakano, just to give her good competition,
right?
Okay, so that begs the question: why was Japanese wrestling so much more evolved than American wrestling? We had Moolah dominate wrestling for 28 years, but it looks like she held down a lot of talent.
Yeah.
She held it from developing. She held women's wrestling and she hurt it at the same time.
Yeah.
My God, and Wendy Richter, what happened to her? I mean, she was a big star, gaining a lot of fame. Got screwed over.
Yep.
The WWF just did not care for women's wrestling at this time.
Right.
And I can't say WCW did either. It was a dark age in women's wrestling. Women's wrestling was believed to not sell tickets.
Right.
And anybody that's a wrestling fan right now, aside from the most, I would say the most bitter, like, misogynist, would say that women's wrestling is the talent is amazing. In the WWE, to be honest with you, in the WWE, I don't know how it is at AWA or God Almighty, I'm gonna keep calling AEW AWA for the rest of my life. I don't know how it is with AEW, but in the WWE, in my opinion, since the Four Horsewomen came on board from NXT, I would say that the women's wrestling to me has been more interesting than the men's wrestling. They're more versatile. Okay.
Okay.
So like with men's wrestling, all the men seem to specialize in something. You know, you got someone like Brock Lesnar who specializes in brawling and power moves.
Right.
You've got Shinsuke Nakamura who specializes in striking. You've got all the people that do the toupee suicidas every 5 seconds. They specialize in being high flying.
Right.
Then you got your mat wrestlers that specialize in mat wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
When you watch the WWE women wrestlers, they do it all. Every one of them, just about.
Mm-hmm.
Almost every one of them. Like if you watch Charlotte Flair, she's strong.
Yeah.
She's technical.
Mm-hmm.
She does moonsaults off top rope
Right.
onto the outside. I mean, she does all of it. And it's amazing. And she's not the only one.
Mm-hmm.
I just use her as an example. Unfortunately, they lost Sasha Banks. I think the WWE really screwed up losing her. I'm getting too far to the future. Let's back it up.
Okay.
Because we're going to get into all that shit in the next episode. Women's
right.
wrestling today.
All right.
But Japanese wrestling was far ahead American wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it's because, for whatever reason, a reason I don't understand, even though the culture of Japan is can be very traditional with gender roles. For whatever reason, Japanese wrestling, women's wrestling, was promoted well,
mm-hmm.
and it wasn't promoted well in America.
Right.
And also, I kind of wonder how much damage Demula did to it. Did she do more damage than she did good? Now, we can't blame Moolah for what happened to wrestling in the 90s,
mm-hmm.
in women's wrestling.
Right.
But it was behind.
It was already behind.
It was already behind.
Right.
So Alundra Blaze unexpectedly left the WWF,
mm-hmm.
and she took the WWF Women's Championship, which claims lineage, to Cora Livingston. 1906.
1906.
And she threw that belt in the trash. So at the time, to clarify for anybody that may not understand this, the WWF and WCW were in a ratings war.
Mm-hmm.
And WCW just started Nitro. They were climbing up in the ratings. The NWO hadn't been formed yet, where they would start dominating the WWF and nearly killing it.
Yeah.
Right now they were very competitive with one another.
Mm-hmm.
According to Sports Kita, okay, so this happened on December 18th, 1995. According to Sports Kita, there's a dispute between Eric Bischoff and Medusa on who had the idea to throw the title in the trash. Medusa claims that Eric Bischoff made her do it.
Okay.
She showed up to work.
Right.
She had the belt.
Right.
Eric says, you're throwing it in the trash.
Right.
Okay, so your new boss at your new job
mm-hmm.
tells you to do something, you do it, right?
Right.
Okay. Eric says that Medusa is just trying to get the heat off of her back for doing that when it was her idea. To my knowledge, I've never caught Eric Bischoff lying.
Mm-hmm.
Although I kind of believe Medusa more.
Okay.
But maybe it was a combination of both.
Maybe.
I don't know. I do know this. Medusa was later introduced into the Hall of Fame, WWE Hall of Fame, and she brought a trash can and took the women's title out of the trash can.
Oh, that's good.
Bringing the title back to the WWE. But you remember when I said I hate this kind of shit?
Yeah. Throwing down the belts, throwing them in the trash.
Yeah, leave them in the road.
Yeah, leave them in the middle of the road, yeah.
Did you bring your title? Titles don't watch this. Leave the title outside. Leave it in the street.
Run over it after the show.
If you don't know what we're quoting, you just don't know.
You just don't know.
You just don't know. So, yeah, she threw the belt in the trash.
Mm-hmm.
What in the fuck? I hate that kind of shit.
Yep.
Do not throw a championship in the trash, ever.
Yeah.
Never make that an angle. Never. This is your friendly neighborhood Big Mark giving you your whatever you call it, like community service announcement.
Public service announcement.
Public service announcement.
Yeah, PSA.
Do not throw the belt in the trash. Do not throw the belt in the trash.
Yep.
Especially the belt that goes back to 1906. Cora Livingston. 1906.
1906.
Okay? Do not throw that belt in the trash. Okay? Just don't do it.
Yep.
So my plan for the next episode, we're going to talk about women's wrestling championships post 1995. Now, unfortunately, unlike with the men's championship, there's only one title still in existence that dates back to Cora Livingston. 1906.
1906.
And that is the NWA women's title. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
The WWF Women's Championship, there's technically a belt right now with that name, and it's considered the predecessor to this WWF Championship we're talking about.
Okay.
The one that lasted until 2010, I believe.
Okay.
But it's not considered the same lineage.
Okay.
Because you remember, WWF likes to pull belts out of their ass.
Out of their ass, yes.
Thing number 2 I don't like. PSA.
Yeah.
Do not pull belts out of your ass when you own legally title property that can be resurrected and used.
Yeah.
If you want a world heavyweight championship, you've got one already.
Right.
You've got the big gold belt.
Yeah.
Whip it out.
Yeah.
You want the WWF Women's Championship? You got one already.
Yeah.
You got one that on your website claims lineage back to before the WWF was even formed. Back to 1956 with freaking the Fabulous Moolah.
Yeah.
Okay? So why are you creating these new belts? I don't know how many people this is going to get out to. We're losing people every day.
Every
day. We started with 20. Now we're down to 8.
Yeah.
We might have 2.
Yeah. We must have fucked up on that first episode.
Yeah. Nobody gave a fuck after that first
We
one.
lost over half our listeners.
Yeah. So, if this podcast could do one thing or two things, it would be to convince the wrestling world to not throw belts in the trash or throw them on the ground or throw them in the mud or throw them in the street, throw them in the trash compactor, throw them in. Okay, if you do it as an angle and you throw it into the river off of a bridge, that's okay.
That's okay.
That's happened before.
That was funny.
That was funny. Yes, that was part of an angle.
Yeah,
and it was appreciated.
Yeah,
because it was part of an established wrestling storyline.
Yeah.
But don't throw it in the trash. Don't throw it in the landfill. Don't throw it in the ditch. Just don't do that shit. And number 2, do not make new titles and pull them out of your ass unless you have to.
Right.
Okay, AEW had to do that.
Well, yeah.
They didn't have,
They didn't own any.
They didn't own
titles,
anything.
right?
Yeah.
They had to make their own.
And another thing I appreciate AEW doing is they allow other companies to have their belts on their products.
Oh yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that. You've had AAA, you've had IWGP. I want to say that Thunder Rosa brought over the NWA Women's Champion onto AEW TV.
I know Serena Deeb did.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know about. I can't remember if Thunder Rosa did.
Yeah.
I'm not a big AEW person, but I do appreciate that about them.
Yeah.
As someone who appreciates world title lineages in the history, the fact that they allow, even though they don't have any belts of their own,
Yeah.
Aside from the Fuck the World title, which has
Right. Yeah. Well.
history
Yeah.
lineage.
Yeah.
And they have their own history lineage,
Yeah.
but it's newer.
Right.
But even though all their stuff's new, aside from the FTW belt,
Mm-hmm.
they allow these other established titles to be on their product.
Yep.
and I greatly appreciate them for that, because that's something that you'll rarely ever see the WWE do. Like the most recent example of that was when Mickie James brought the Impact Women's title to the Royal Rumble.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was an entrant in the Royal Rumble.
I didn't know that.
She was announced in the WWE as the Impact Women's Champion.
Huh. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about TNA knockouts.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about divas.
Yeah.
Reluctantly.
Yeah.
Although there were some greats in that era, but they were not the Bella Twins.
Is there still a Divas Championship?
No, thank God.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Because at one point there was a Women's Championship and a Divas Championship, or did the Divas? Okay.
There was a Women's Championship and there was a Divas Championship, and let me tell you what they did. I might be spoiling things for the next episode.
Oh God.
They unified the WWF Women's Championship, going back to the Fabulous Moolah,
right,
with the Divas Championship, and they called it the undisputed WWF Divas Championship.
Oh my God.
And then later they dropped the undisputed in the WWF, and it became just the Divas Championship. So the WWF Women's Championship got sucked into the Divas Championship.
Oh God.
Yes, that's why I say that. Unfortunately, there's only going to be one belt.
Yeah.
That goes back to Cora Livingston. 1906.
1906.
Yes, and it's because of that decision to do that.
Yeah.
So the Divas era destroyed a lot of things, and that's one of them. Destroyed history, but it's also their fault for not bringing back the original lineage of the WWE Women's Championship. They have it; they could do it.
Yep.
They chose not to. That's it for me, folks. I don't know when we'll have our next episode.
Yeah, so I guess I'll go ahead and let everybody know. We may not do next week's episode. I'll post on Twitter when we know for sure. I'll be out of town this weekend. We may do it on Sunday, but if we're not able to do it early enough, we'll probably just skip ahead to the next weekend. So, but I'll keep that updated for our 8 listeners.
Minus the 2 we're going to lose.
Yeah. Yeah, our 6 listeners. Oh, man.
All right. Well,
all right. So, yeah, that was good stuff. So we'll have part 2 at least in a couple weeks.
Yeah, women's championships post 1995. We're going to talk about the lineages of women's wrestling.
All right. So for Glenn Ritchie, I'm Lance Vaughn. Have a good one.
Peace.